Okay, looks like we are live now. So yeah, I guess one thing to say is that the live streams have sort of petered off a bit. So as a result, this has kind of turned into a bit of a less polished video experience. So in that sense, it's probably at this point time to just go back to making normal videos, though this was already scheduled, so we're going to keep to this. But yeah, I think starting next week, I'm just going to go back to static videos to have more focus, slightly better production, less uhs and ahs and less awkward pauses, stuff like that. Um, so I guess the most interesting thing that has come up in the last week is that the governor is now planning on going back towards business opening or a phased opening of businesses. So, she gave a talk last week and there's slides and stuff. I'm not I'm not really convinced by the governor's plan simply because it seems like the timeline is too aggressive for it. Um, I can sort of I have this up on my phone, which is why I'm looking off camera so much. But the gist is that as of last Friday, um, we've entered into what she's called a preparation phase. And for this, the probably biggest two things for us, or three, I guess, is that non-essential retailers can operate via curbside pickup and delivery service only where permitted by the license. My understanding is that caveat, where permitted by their license, basically means that stuff like liquor stores aren't included. But I believe this means that most businesses in the county are now allowed to operate by curbside pickup. So, for example, Village Arts is going to reopen 10 to 4 starting tomorrow for curbside, though I believe they're only doing art supplies and not framing. Um, I haven't had time really to get a hold of anybody else to find out what other people's plans are. So this, the governor's plan is for this. Sorry, let me back up a sec. The other big thing is it says golf courses allowed to open for golf only, no dine-in food service or retail. I assume that means, again, going inside retail. So I guess everybody's allowed to golf again, which as far as things to do in the county goes, reopening the golf course certainly sounds perfectly fine. Just with the usual caveats applying that if you do want to go golfing, make sure to wear masks and be careful about, I guess, avoiding touching each other's balls. Um, and the third thing that's happened on Friday is state parks are reopened, daily use only, no camping or visitor centers. So I guess I got to say that this does worry me a little bit. So Jordan and I took a drive on NM4 yesterday out towards Jemez Springs, and there's just a ton of parks along there, and the parks were packed, which is good, and I think indicative of just how much the stay-at-home order is affecting people. The worrisome thing about that is we didn't see a lot of masks at the state parks, and we did not see a lot of distancing at the state parks.
We saw that in Pecos as well.
Yeah, and John says they saw that in Pecos as well. So, I guess it does probably need to be reiterated. If you go to state parks or if you go golfing, make sure to continue, doing all these good pandemic behaviors. Keep wearing masks. Be careful about what you touch. Keep distance from other from the others in the park or the golf course. So then it says phase one is set to begin mid-May if there's not a resurgence, which will basically reopen virtually everything except theaters and casinos at reduced occupancy, and also dine in at restaurant with reduced occupancy. I gotta say, the thing that concerns me about a targeting mid-May for dine-in restaurants, and to a lesser extent reduced occupancy of retail, as is the issue of incubation time for the disease, right? That if the disease has a 2 week incubation period and you're pretty contagious during that time, the governor's order says that this reopening is going to be contingent upon New Mexicans continuing to observe social distancing practices. I'm worried by the fact that moving to that phase in 2 weeks is going to mean that there won't even be enough time to know whether or not, whether or not social distancing is really still being observed properly. Because there's, particularly with New Mexico being such a large and sparse state, there's the question: well, how's the governor's office going to know whether or not social distancing is still being observed? And the easiest way to know is whether or not we see a spike in infections. But will we see a spike in infections quickly enough? Will there be enough testing to really know? Ultimately, probably not. So I'm worried about that element of the plan. I think that curbside pickup for retail can work out. Then the plan sort of continues along that. A couple of weeks or a few weeks after that, reopening of theaters, bars, and casinos at reduced occupancy, which runs into the same problems. Though hopefully by then, if there is a resurgence of cases, we'll know then and have a better handle on whether or not reopening of theaters and casinos is a sound plan. So that said, the question was brought up to me by counsel, and this is as a business owner, about what the county can be doing. So, even though I am at least skeptical of the governor's timeline, the fact remains that the county government is still subservient to the state government, so we have to follow the governor's orders. So what can the county do to defray the risks of the governor's plan? I think the biggest thing is the governor also calls on employees to wear face masks, and for businesses to be really really diligent about sanitization. So one of the things that I worry about then is that if we have a statewide, sudden need for businesses all across the state to be engaging in, routine and diligent sanitization, that will get a run on disinfectant products and on face masks. So, my main answer to the county on that is that the county can be a supplier of at least face masks, possibly gloves, and definitely spray disinfectant. So, on that, there's been a variety of people around town making multi-layered cloth face masks, which are, within the CDC's recommendations on all of this. So, the county coordinating purchases of face masks from the people making them, I think, would be a really good move for the county. The other is that, while Kroger Smith's has problems with these just runs on kind of random things, distributors or wholesalers tend to distribute things more equitably. Wholesalers have a tendency to try and divide their products out among the businesses that they serve. So there may be, yeah, so there may be some opportunity here for businesses who have suppliers who have supplies of spray disinfectants to then sell them at cost on to the county, for the county to then sell them at cost on to businesses that don't have distributors with access to spray disinfectants. So, certainly here at Automotive Professionals, we have we've been able to keep supplies in stock because our parts distributor has them. So, we've supplied a bit of them to other businesses, but we'll call our distributor on Monday, see just how much spray disinfectant we can get our hands on for resale to other businesses. I suspect that the other business that can really help a lot on that front is Metzger's. So I hope that the county will be reaching out to Metzger's to see whether or not their supplier, Do It Best, can provide isopropanol or bleach or hydrogen peroxide in large supplies to the county. Yeah, so Charlotte mentions the governor may be feeling pressured to allow businesses to reopen due to the economic impact on business owners. Yeah, that's almost certainly true. I think that the news went that the governor created a committee to evaluate reopening of businesses, and I think it was mostly, business representatives or like trade group representatives that made up that committee. So yeah, they probably did have a lot to do with this, and that is probably one of the big reasons that there's such an aggressive reopening timeline. So, hopefully the county manages to keep local businesses supplied to keep up disinfection. I'm definitely not terribly worried about going to curbside service, at least for businesses that can allow it. And I don't think we have many, or possibly really any, retail businesses that can't go to curbside, because even our liquor store is also a grocery store. So that's kind of the main thing there. Let's see. So,
Just might want to remind people May 5th is or finish your thought.
oh, no, so that's good. So May 5th is the deadline for changing party.
Yeah, voter registration deadline.
Yeah. So yeah, as a reminder, New Mexico is a closed primary state, which means if you want to vote in any primary election, you have to be a member of a major party. So the primary election is going to be June 2nd. So the Secretary of State's office has set this Tuesday, May 5th, as the voter registration deadline if you want to change your party to allow you to vote in the primary. So yeah, as John put into the chat there, nmvote.org allows you to change your party registration online, and it is really easy to do so. So yeah, if you are not part of a major party, even no matter what your party affiliation is or your party leanings are, you should definitely be in a major party, right? New Mexico has no benefit to being independent or declined to state. Let's see. Also, tomorrow, the League of Women Voters is doing a candidate forum for candidates in primary elections. So that includes not just the Democratic county council race, which has 4 candidates seeking 3 seats, but it also includes a bunch of other positions that are also really worth voting in and seeing what the candidates have to say, including the U.S. House Representatives. I believe there's a primary for our state senate. I think I saw someone in the office of the shop. Oh, what's up?
What's up? Just grabbing a couple things.
Yeah, not a problem. So this is the always sort of the downside of live streaming from the shop. One of our employees has just shown up to grab something, but and he's pretty apolitical, so I don't think he wants to be a part of this.
Yeah, I have not invited you to watch this stream.
Yes. So what are you looking for?
The battery charger.
Oh, not that one. Oh, for like the rechargeable double A's.
No, it's like a big gray one.
Oh yeah. Okay.
There it is. Okay, I got it.
All right. Yeah, which anyway, so the League of Women Voters thing. So that's going to be it's being done by Zoom, and since of course we're not organizing it, I don't know terribly much about their logistical plans. Maybe the plan is to just do a Zoom meeting and then post videos of it. Hopefully broadcasting on PAC 8 as well. But so I'll update you once I find out what the league's plans are on getting the videos out there. But yeah, with there being a contested U.S. House race, it's definitely worth seeing what our national candidates have to say as well. Not to shortchange the county council race, because this is absolutely a really important race as well. So let's see.
Do you want to do a minor update on the urban park
Mm,
lights?
yeah. So there's also been sort of a long-standing issue with urban park that I've ended up getting involved in, where the urban park tennis lights or tennis court lights are quite tall, quite badly shielded, and also quite high temperature, as they're really white. Whereas street lights, for example, are very orange, so they're less bothersome. So, I've brought that up to the county manager and the county council, and I was told that it is being addressed. So I guess we'll see what that means. I'll continue following it, though. My position on the urban park lights is that the county code does regulate outdoor illumination, and it certainly seems to me that the urban park lights violate our county code. So the county really is on the hook to do something about that. So if they don't, I'll definitely keep pressuring them on it. And none of this has to do with forbidding playing tennis at Urban Park, just at making the lights more reasonable for the residences surrounding it. And I guess the other thing that I'd like to point out, and that I'll continue to talk about, and move to letters to the editor and so forth in the not too distant future, is one thing that people have been saying about the COVID-19 pandemic is that it has really revealed a lot of the weaknesses in the American economy, the American healthcare system, the fact that the safety net really isn't adequate for individuals who've been laid off or furloughed in the pandemic. But, it's also really hit businesses hard. And one of the things that disturbs me about what's been happening in Los Alamos is that there hasn't been rent abatement or lowering or forgiving of commercial or residential rents, for people who are unemployed or businesses that are closed. So you know, this really goes more to demonstrate the extent to which the commercial real estate market is a big part of, um, it's a big part of the problem with trying to run a business in Los Alamos. So unfortunately, there's very little that the county government can do about this today, right? There's very little that we can do in the crisis to, get more reasonable behavior out of the commercial landlords. Among other things, state law explicitly prohibits rent controls. But what this does point out is that, the state of the commercial real estate market really is the big culprit behind the state of our business community. The fact that downtown's a commercial graveyard, right? It's really not the county government. It really is the landlords, and their behavior during this crisis has really, unfortunately, done a lot to demonstrate that fact. That basically businesses have been left alone to shoulder this burden with a frankly mismanaged federal program, while the landlords continue to just sit back and collect rental revenue and are not sharing the burden of their tenants at all. And it's the sort of thing that makes you wonder what even is the moral justification for them collecting the rents that they do. There's legal justification, but on the other hand, lacking moral justification means that going forward, we are, as a community, absolutely in the right to use county code as much as we can to get them under control. So those are the main things that I had to say, from what's happened over the past week. So unless John has anything else, we'll probably just go ahead and wrap this up and go back to static videos next week.
There's a couple of things. I don't know if you want to talk about any of them. Did you talk about contact tracing in New Mexico?
Oh yeah, so it's the question of contact tracing, right? So I think other countries have demonstrated that the most effective way of fighting the pandemic is testing everybody and then tracing who they've come into contact with to test them or to quarantine them. So that is part of the governor's plan, is to go towards more testing, more contact tracing. The state wants to get to doing 3,000 tests per day. Whether or not that's adequate, it's hard to say. Because, again, looking at the state generally, we do have the big problem of being a big, sparse state. So, routine testing isn't as easy as it is in a smaller state or in dense urban areas. So, I do wonder whether or not the magnitude of testing that's been proposed is going to be good enough, and whether or not the state health department has the logistical capability to keep it going, to keep testing sort of routine in any particular area. My understanding is that what's been happening so far is that the Department of State, or the Department of Health, tours the state and sets up, one-day testing centers in one place and then goes on to another. I don't know what the full circuit time is, how long it takes the health department to get around the state. So then I don't know what the temporal frequency of testing is currently or under any proposed plan. So that's a big question. But then the other big question is, how's contact tracing going to play out? We are also a poorer state overall. So I don't know what cell phone ownership around the state is, or how much the state knows everybody's cell phone numbers. So then if contact tracing has to be done by mail. There's a couple days on that. So will contact tracing be able to keep up with the spread of people who test positive and potentially pass the virus on? I don't know. I'm skeptical. So ultimately the logistical problems inherent in contact tracing do just go to reemphasize my skepticism with the aggressiveness of the governor's reopening plans. Particularly with what is almost certainly a pretty long time for the health department to get around the state and get back to any place. We could get into a real bad spot with this plan, where infections basically shoot up in the wake of DOH testing. And then even though the governor does have these caveats of, well, we'll proceed to the next phase of reopening if we don't get a resurgence of cases, will we know if there's a resurgence of cases in time? I'm really worried about that. I certainly hope that Los Alamos County will continue to be diligent about maintaining distance. I do remain concerned about grocery shopping. That people may not be following good protocols as well as they should be at the grocery store. I think
certainly see more people not wearing masks than I expect.
Yeah, right. There's more people at the grocery store not wearing masks than you would expect or hope. We, as much as it's going to make grocery shopping a pain, one of the biggest things for it, I think, is going to be one-way aisles and no passing in the aisles. And then just people getting better at making lists before going to the store and, being quick about picking things out to avoid gumming it up too much. But ultimately, gumming up the grocery store is better than having a big flare-up of cases in the county. But, hopefully the county won't be affected too badly by the governor's plans. As I said, though, curbside pickup at Village Arts, right? Not really anything that's going to affect us horribly. I don't think. So, yeah, I know it's a dangerous situation, and the governor's feeling pressure, and I certainly understand that, but I'm worried. As for enjoying the weather,
yes,
so,
to wrap up.
Yeah.
And on a lighter note, we just talk about.
Yeah. So yeah, we went on a drive yesterday, though we also wore masks when we got out of the car and tried to keep distance from others. But I besides my Mazda CX-5, I also have a old 90s Miata, so I got pretty badly burned. A bit burned on my face, but man, my arms get bad.
Yeah, that's quite the farmer's tan there.
Well, not just that, but it's super red here. So yeah, so that's at least us in the weather. We both get pretty worn down by the various things we do, so we tend to try and have lighter weekends. Yeah, so a drive through the Jemez was, I think, about all that Jordan or I could manage this weekend. In mentally preparing myself to even come back and do live streaming. So yeah, the usual caveats remain, right? Stay healthy, stay safe, vote in the primary, change your voter registration if you haven't yet already. Watch the League of Women Voters forum. I think it's going to be really interesting. I think that the Democratic Party's come up with a good group of candidates for the U.S. House, so definitely tune into that. See what my fellow candidates for this office have to say. So I think that'll be really interesting, really worth a watch. And yeah, otherwise I'll see you next week in a more refined format. Later.